So first I wanted to talk about why I started researching Benjamin Britten and his works for children. I worked with Dr. Vickers last semester, who's actually a Britten scholar for those who don't know him. That's on the faculty in the School of Music. And he suggested that I look at Britten's work, The Little Sweep, which is an opera for children. And I thought that was interesting, especially from a music education perspective. Not a lot of famous composers have works specifically written for children. So I thought that was particularly interesting. And I know last semester was all Britten, so if you will just indulge me in this presentation, might be the last time you hear about him this year. So this discussion is going to focus on Britten's beliefs and how those applied to his music making for children. Alright, so I think that this quote is kind of a quintessential Britten belief. And not a lot of people know, but Britten actually co-wrote an informative book for children called The Wonderful World of Music that talks about all aspects of music, from history, from composition, theory, and this is from the page specifically about composition. Imogen Holst wrote this. She was actually his longtime assistant, daughter of Gustav Holst. But she wrote on the page, when a composer sets out to write a piece of music, he's usually quite definite about what he's going to create. For although music is intangible, there is nothing vague about it. And I think that really applies to all of Benjamin Britten's music, even his works for children. There's nothing vague about them. So here are some of Britten's works for children that he wrote. He wrote many. Today we'll be focusing on 3 of those works and kind of looking at the overarching ideas in those. The Little Sweep, Noye, and then, of course, War Requiem. So Noye is a children's opera that Britten wrote, and it was premiered in December of 1957. This is based on the story of Noah's Ark. And I want to show a clip, but I was having a lot of troubles with this last night because I wanted to just show, oh my gosh, wait, it's working now, never mind, don't worry. Alright, so let me skip a little bit ahead. And that's a common thing in Britten's children's operas. He wrote audience songs for audience participation. So the plot of Noye, like I said, is the story of Noah's Ark, set to music by Benjamin Britten. It was originally a Chester Miracle play, which were placed from the 15th century, I believe. The music in this combines professional and amateur performers, so we see Noah, the main character, being a full-fledged professional singer. There's a lot of pieces in this. And a lot of amateur performers, as you saw the little kids in the animal costumes. I enjoy Britten's works because, like this says, although tailored to take account of the abilities of less accomplished players, he does not condescend to the younger audience for which he's writing. Some of the overarching ideas here, survival through faith, innocence, or redemption of mankind. And music is a communal and practical experience. So we see this in Britten's works not only for children, but for also older audiences, is that he has a real goal of democratizing music for the masses, as music should be a practical thing. Right, War Requiem. That's at Illinois State University. We did that last semester. So War Requiem is a huge work, not just for children's choir, but for organ, large chorus, chamber orchestra, symphony orchestra, and most importantly, a boys' choir. War Requiem was based on the poetry of Wilfred Owen, who said this, "My subject is war and the pity of war. The poetry is in the pity, all the poet can do today is mourn." Britten was really moved by this text, and he wanted to set it to music along with the normal Requiem Latin text. So the music here, when we get from the boys' choir only, I didn't want to dissect the whole thing, we have this strange distant sound from the boys' choir that's very different than the large, powerful sound that we're getting from the rest of the ensemble. And we see some overarching ideas of pacifism, which is one of Britten's deep beliefs, anti-war. He was a big pacifist. The sacrifice of religion and innocence of this pure angelic tone of the boys' choir against a world of hate. And lastly, the little sweep. This is the work that I spent the most time researching, as this is what my research was based on last semester. Was premiered in 1949. And Britten actually based this work on a poem by William Blake. He based many of his works on poems by William Blake. But I'll read this to you because I think it's kind of poignant to the woes of industrial capitalism, should we say, that the little sweep was based off of. So when my mother died, I was very young. My father sold me while yet my tongue could scarcely cry, weep, 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 weep. So your chimneys I sweep, and in soot I sleep. And the second verse. And by came an angel who had a bright key, and he opened the coffins and set them all free. Then down green plain, leaping, laughing they run, and wash in a river and shine in the sun. So we see this reflected in the little sweep through the plot, which is based around Sammy, a 9-year-old boy who's forced to work to earn money for his family as a chimney sweep. Luckily for Sammy, one sweeping day, he goes into the Brooks house and meets the Brook children and Rowan, who's a kind nursery maid. And at the end, sorry to ruin the ending for you, he's set free from his chimney sweeping life. So again, we see this kind of redemption of innocence here. Musically, we see this catered toward children because of repetition and light melody, stuff that will kind of keep in children's ears. Again, audience participation. There are also audience songs included throughout the work. And again, inherent innocence of children and saving children from a lack of freedom. I would also argue that another theme in this opera is kind of the theme of the haves and the have-nots, right? So Sammy, the sweep, would come from a land of have-nots, whereas the Brook children represents the haves. Okay. So why did Britten feel so obligated to write music for children? He was very adamant in his belief that it's essential that real children should play the children's parts. Okay, so what was it about children that he liked? Well, one thing, which is an overarching idea here, is the innocence of children. But the question is, where did that innocence come from? And we're going to talk about that a little bit. So some themes that we saw were relevant: sacrifice of an innocent victim, the ingenuity of children, triumph of children over adults, the idea of innocence, and the loss of innocence. Okay? So this may have come from Britten's own life, as he had an abnormal childhood in that he was very gifted and didn't actually spend much time in school. In fact, went to the Royal College of Music at age 16. So he was kind of robbed of those critical years of innocent childhood. I liked in the Britten Companion, Christopher Palmer wrote, "It's a fact that the childhood vision, once clouded over, can never be captured in its pristine purity." And I think this was something that kind of irked Britten throughout his life, and something that frustrated him, that he really wanted to experience that childhood. So these are some excerpts from the Diaries of the Young Benjamin Britten, which actually he only kept for a short period of time until he stopped. He was much a perfectionist and was not interested in re-looking at his work and being embarrassed by it or seeing his mistakes. But these two particular excerpts, I think, show something about the young Benjamin Britten, 15-year-old Britten, in that, first, he's interested in composing, interested in composers. He has rings. That's supposed to say Bach. And the second one speaks pointedly to two things. First, his dedication to music composition. And second, his belief in the routines of a school life, which we kind of see repeating over his whole life. We see specific times of the day he practices, when he eats breakfast, when he goes and does something. He has a plan. He often has a routine. And so here we see he's got to have 2 oranges a day. Things like that he's very dedicated to, as he was sick a lot as a child. And then throughout the rest of his life, Britten kind of yearned for childhood, the childhood that he never had. So he never reached the point where he had outgrown his school, and so he seems to have spent the rest of his life hunting for those 3 missing scholastic years. So like I mentioned before, he left home for the Royal College of Music at age 16. And we see throughout the rest of his life that Britten actually had a number of male companions in his life. He would pick a certain number of boys and they would be his companion for a while, and he would, like this picture shows, would spend time with them and dedicate his time with them. And one of the most interesting things that I have researched is that Britten's world stopped for his children. So even Peter Piers, his partner, took second place to Britten's children, as we would say. So they held a really special place in his heart. So some questions to think about is, was Britten's childlike nature essential to his creativity? Did this childlike nature influence his compositions? And I would argue, yes, very much it did. You'll listen to a clip in a second from The Little Sweep. But one thing that Benjamin Britten, like I had mentioned before, does not do is condescend to the artist for whom he is writing. So we see his compositions geared towards younger children, but we don't see them being more simple. We just see him incorporating accessible measures for children. This is an excerpt from The Little Sweep. A very catchy melody that comes in the ear. So although the music is not simplified, it is accessible for children to perform. Britten composes whether for children or for adults out of his total experience and his total commitment as an artist. And I believe that that's illustrated in some of the changes that he made for his child artist. This is just one example. There's a point in The Little Sweep where the original line said, "How shall I laugh for joy?" Britten, when corresponding with the librettist of The Little Sweep, Eric Crozier, wrote, "I've heard it many times now, and I think the double F and or sound troubles the kids too much. The Ipswich boy is never as convincing in a moment which should be most touching." Thus, Crozier changed the lyric to "How shall I laugh and play," which we'll listen to briefly. Britten's level of accessibility for children, not only that, but also his commitment to music, his commitment to being a musical artist, because we see he wants it to be touching and convincing, he wants it to be accessible also. So I think you see both of those dimensions of Britten, his perfectionism as an artist, along with his ability to cater his music to children. This is just a paragraph I'll let you read on your own. I'll read the last part of it. Works such as The Little Sweep and Noye are testaments to Britten's fervor in achieving his goal of accessibility in the arts. It was in fact the passion behind his works for children that led to such success. And I think one thing that we can all take away from Britten, especially music educators, is that Britten did not underestimate the abilities of the young. And I think that's something really important to keep in mind in today's world. Britten was a high composer, but I think oftentimes we underestimate the abilities of children and what they can do, whereas Britten seemed to, in many ways, overestimate their abilities or expect a lot of them. So I think that that's a lesson that we can learn and that Britten has left us for the future. So, thank you.